Welcome to CityWorks, a co-production of the City University of New York School of Labor and Urban Studies and CUNY TV. I'm Laura Flanders. Every month here on CityWorks, we take a look at the challenges and lived experiences of working people on the job, at home, and in our communities. On this episode of CityWorks, the future of public sector workers and the unions that represent them. These government employee unions, city, state, and federal, have faced numerous challenges since their mid-20th century heyday, culminating in the 2018 Supreme Court decision, Janus, preventing public sector unions from collecting dues from non-members, a decision that some claimed would effectively destroy those unions. Today, organized labor in the public sector is facing an even greater political threat. Advisors to the Trump administration have called for the wholesale elimination of public sector unions, as well as the weakening of dozens of laws protecting workers. Public sector workers in New York and around the nation are facing a wave of other challenges as well, from working in agencies that are understaffed to the negative effects of outsourcing to the potential peril of artificial intelligence in the workforce. Our guests today to help us sort through all of this are leaders at two of the nation's largest public sector unions. Barbara Edmonds is Director of Strategic Initiatives at New York City's District Council 37, one of the nation's largest public sector unions, an adjunct professor at the CUNY School of Labor and Urban Studies. Gabriel Pereira is Legislative Director at the American Federation of Government Employees, AFGE, the nation's largest union of federal government workers. Gabriel, Barbara, welcome to the program. I am so glad to have you. I guess just to begin, where will people find your members? Who are we talking about, Barbara, when we're talking about the workers you represent and work with?
You'd find us in the libraries. You'd find us in museums. You would find us in the public hospital system, which is one of the largest public hospital systems, I believe, in New York City and across the nation. You'd find us in schools. You would find us in the Department of Buildings and various other agencies doing clerical, blue-collar, white-collar, professional, you name it, we do it.
Right here at CUNY TV?
And we do it here at CUNY, in fact, and thank you for reminding me and some of the folks that are here that are vital in the programs, the services that we provide every day.
And what about yours, Gabriel?
We represent 700,000 workers across the country. We're the largest representative of federal workers. We represent workers at the Department of Veterans Affairs, which is a very large hospital system, one of the largest federal agencies in the country. We represent workers at the Social Security Administration across the country, TSA officers, people who work at airports and protect us at airport security. We represent people at the Department of EPA, HUD, and Bureau of Prisons as well.
So really critical workers.
Large,
Not
yes.
that all workers aren't critical, but this is a particularly important group and a group that's been under attack. And we should say we're about a week out from the inauguration. You've been facing challenges, as I alluded to, even before what is to come. So let's start right there, Gabriel. Sure. Your federal workers, what are they up against at this moment?
At this moment, we're up against Trump 2.0, I would describe it. We went through 4 years of the first Trump administration, which included attacks on our membership in the sense that Trump issued what they call executive orders, making it harder for the union to represent workers, basically saying that if you want to represent workers, you cannot use official work time anymore. You have to use your own personal time to represent workers who have grievance issues, things of that nature. And the other thing that the Trump administration did is they started charging the union prime office space rent for space in New York City, Boston, Los Angeles. Prior to that, there are collective bargaining agreements that say the union is entitled to free office space within the facilities. The Trump administration said, you have to pay us. You have to basically turn it into like a private marketplace for the government to make money off of this. And a lot of the smaller offices couldn't afford that, so they just shut down. So it's essentially just trying to shut the union down, basically.
And what about here in New York? What about DC 37, Barbara?
In DC 37, obviously one of the biggest issues for us was the Janus decision. were faced with a Supreme Court decision that basically said that unions, public sector unions, no longer could mandate that employees that were public sector would have to be members automatically of the union. In other words, we would have to go out and sign up those members. That was a major decision. However, what we did see, in fact, particularly with AFSCME, our parent union, despite the thought that we would lose a lot of members, we actually were able to sign up and grow, but that required what is basically the most important critical thing that unions need to do, and that is to have those one-on-one conversations and explain the vital role that labor unions play in their lives, in the communities, and not just the bread and butter issues of wages and benefits. So we showed in black and white that wages of members that are in unions are substantially greater. We shared that pension benefits, we shared that health and welfare insurance benefits are much better. And in fact, when you look today at the most recent surveys that have done, unions are positively viewed. I think the last time the AFL-CIO did a survey, they talked about a 70% satisfaction rating in terms of support of unions. Notwithstanding the challenges that we're experiencing, our fellow sisters and brothers in the federal government, it takes those conversations. And beyond that, it takes building relationships, which is what we are going to have to do as we get into this new year facing 2025.
So ironically, would it be fair to say that what looked like a really negative decision, Janice, actually required you all to engage in more interpersonal connection with potential members, more places of actual contact? I'm looking for cheery straws here in what feels like a bleak scenario. Coming to you, Gabriel, when we talk about Trump 2.0, as you put it,
Right.
What's your biggest fear? I mean, some of the big things I named at the top sounded pretty scary, basically doing away with public sector unions in the federal sector altogether.
Right. Well, I think our biggest fear is that they'll try to do away with dues deduction, automatic dues deduction, what they can issue an order that basically Trump will order the federal government not to process union dues from payroll anymore. So we've been prepared for that, and we've switched everyone over to something called e-dues, where we're collecting our dues independently. So they're electronic dues, so people can sign up via credit card, debit card, Apple Pay, their bank accounts directly, and they don't have to go through the federal payroll anymore, because there is a sense that they might try to basically just put us out of business, in the sense that if we can't collect dues, we can't run.
So what about New York? Different scenario. We have many municipal elections coming up in the next year, a lot going on right here. How does the change in administration in Washington affect you?
We are working in coalition, as always, with AFGE, with AFT, UFT, the AFL-CIO. We are putting together and making sure that we're going to build whatever type of firewall and strategies. And at the top of that list is the importance of going out and having those conversations and educating not only the members, but the public. Going back, quite frankly, to grassroots, talking to folks in the community boards, the neighborhood associations, our faith communities about what is at stake, and learning the lessons from the election, that we don't wait, that this has to be an ongoing process, and we look to our state and local government structures and determine ways that we can use those to also shore up and build in barriers, whether it's legislatively, ballot initiatives, other things that we've had successes in New York City and New York State.
So let's take a quick break, and we'll come right back and hear a little bit more about what some of these strategies are. And overall, how are you thinking about some of the big promises or threats, depending on how you look at it, that were made during the Trump administration's campaign, specifically around shrinking the budget? We'll be right back. You're watching CityWorks. Welcome back to CityWorks. We're talking about organized labor in the public sector and the sizable, perhaps historic challenges they face today. One of those, Gabriel, coming to you with AFSCME federal workers, is the challenge of the big threats that the Trump administration has made regarding cutting the public budget. I think you've got Elon Musk and his colleagues talking about a third. Where will they find a third to cut?
Good question. You know, this reminds me of, it used to be Grover Norquist was the original. He said he's going to shrink the government so much they could drown it in the bathtub.
One or the other.
Yeah, one of these these ideologues. You know, I think they sit in a classroom somewhere and they come up with these ideas, but they don't realize the impact it has on the people in this country.
Is it even doable?
No, I don't think it. Well, I mean, technically it is if we want to end up in some kind of a 19th century slum. If we want to live like that, it is doable. But we have to ask ourselves, what kind of a country do we want to live in? You know, do we want to live in a Dickensian slum, or do we want to live in a 21st century modern, you know, America that has good health care and good schools and good social services for everyone? So that's what we have to ask ourselves, because someone like an Elon Musk, Vivek Ramaswamy, these are multimillionaires, very wealthy people who probably think they don't need the government, maybe have never had to need any help with anything in life. I don't know. I've never lived their life.
No one has had more public contracts than Elon Musk.
No
one is more of a welfare king than him.
Yeah, it's strange to say the least. But yeah, I don't know where they're gonna find the cuts. They're talking about we're not gonna touch Social Security, we're not gonna touch Medicare. So what do you go after? Well, we're gonna go after the poor, basically. They're talking about going after food stamp programs, school lunch programs, student loan forgiveness programs, things, Medicaid, which, I mean, over 40% of the people in New York State are on Medicaid. Medicaid has expanded a great deal in the past 10 years. I don't know. I think one of the rules in politics is that you don't take things away from the public. Yeah. Once you give the voters something, you don't take it away from them.
A lot of people, we said we're about a week out from the inauguration. We're also in a week where LA is burning up. I don't mean metaphorically, I mean actually, with huge swaths of both wealthy and very working class neighborhoods literally burnt to the ground. Does that shift public attitudes in any way, do you think, Barbara? In the sense that might some of us think again about, well, what public services do we really rely on, that we're really glad are there in an emergency?
I actually think to some degree it will. Yesterday,
the kind of thing you're mentioning with people?
Yeah, I think that we're seeing folks saying, "Wait a minute, do I have to go hire a private firefighter to protect my home?" Are we in that situation now where prisoners are being asked to deal with what should really be a public service and a common good? So I do think that with the recent climate change challenges, and these are serious ones, particularly what happened in North Carolina, I think that folks are waking up a bit. I do think, however, there is that force out there that does not care. So it's critical to point at these very concrete situations that are happening around the weather changes that are clearly affecting folks across the board, rich or poor, black or white, and showing that there is the importance of bringing folks together from these different aspects. Heather McGhee talks a little bit about this in her book, The Sum of Us, where she went across the country and she talked to folks and tried to show that there is a common good. And we have to try to connect those dots and make sure that folks understand that public services that are adequately funded affect everyone, that there is a common good element. And as we enter the season of Dr. King's birthday, and after that, the connection with a union that we really want to bring together, I think there's opportunities to have those conversations and to look at concrete ways that we can do that.
You mentioned that the city could be a firewall in certain ways, that there are certain things that city and states can do to protect themselves perhaps from what's coming down from Washington. How so? What sort of things are you thinking of?
Well, the Economic Policy Institute has done some incredible work not only over the last year, but since they've been in existence. And one of the things that they talked about was things like boards and worker councils. One of the great achievements that I think we have is with the New York City Consumer and Worker Protections Agency. And there's many ways that that structure was put in place with the addition of the worker aspects on protections. And we've seen a lot of regulations come out of that agency, outreach tools and newsletters to workers, not only represented workers, but our folks in the community, our migrant workers and folks that are sometimes forgotten, our fast food workers, the gig economy, looking at ways to reach them. There's also ways that we can use ballot initiatives effectively if we organize, and there are ways that we can also look at creating the successes of legislation like the legislation recently signed by the governor around artificial intelligence, requiring state agencies to produce reports, analyze in detail, and make sure that they're not using artificial intelligence to leave those that are supposed to be protected, that need childcare, that need other social services, to make sure that those types of algorithms that are used are not trying to hurt them. So there are those types of tools.
And are there more in your toolbox, Gabriel?
I mean, I think the most important thing for us is to make the public realize just how important it is to have a federal government that is well funded, and to make people realize that when you talk about the federal government, you're not just talking about some kind of a faceless bureaucracy. You're talking about real public servants who work in these jobs, who are not millionaires, who are there because they really care about the mission. They care about the mission. Many of our members are veterans. Over 30% of AFG members are veterans, and they work at the Department of Veterans Affairs for a reason, because they have that strong connection to the VA. And I think if you talk to some people out there in the public, they'll just say, well, everyone is making a lot of money and they're lazy and they're not doing the right work and things of that nature. And that's just simply not true. So I think we have to make sure the public knows just how vital it is that the people who work for the government are treated with respect, that they are appreciated, and that people see just how vital it is. I mean, for example, Bureau of Prisons, severely underfunded. We have people working crazy shifts. People are falling asleep on the job. They're working so many hours. We don't have enough staff there. And we have to do a much better job of staffing these agencies. I mean, these are people who literally protect the public from violent criminals. Yeah. And we have to make sure that they are getting the funding they need, and they're not getting the funding they need. And when you talk about cuts, I'm sorry, but our government has been cut so much in the past 40 or 50 years anyway. I don't think people realize perspective matters here. We are not the government we were in the 50s and the 60s. We don't have the same kind of a commitment to a strong government.
And those prison workers also protect prisoners from abuse.
Yes.
And from some of the horrendous scenes that we've seen recently.
Yes.
That goes back to, okay, if the worst happens, if the Trump administration and its lackeys try some of the things that you mentioned at the top, what difference would being in a union make for those members, for those workers?
Well, one of the differences, Trump is talking about loyalty oaths and things of that nature when it comes to the civil service. He wants people there who are loyal to him. And I think that the idea of the civil service is you're loyal to the Constitution. Right. You're not loyal to one particular party or particular person. And I think that we don't want to have a civil service that's political. So I think that's one of our biggest fears as well, is that if they go through with some of these reforms and get them through, that we're going to have a civil service that is not bipartisan.
So if you, just to play it out very concretely, if you're a worker, but you've decided not to join the union, and you think, well, maybe you're basically represented in the negotiations around wages and conditions anyway, what difference would it make to you if you suddenly were asked to make a loyalty oath and wondered where you would turn?
Well, you wouldn't have the same representation if you're not in the union. The way it works with AFG is that you're not required to be a member of AFG as a federal employee, but if you are and you do have a problem in the workplace, you are entitled to more representation as you go along in the grievance process. So that's the major benefit to being an AFG member. We have national representatives, labor representatives on staff, specifically trained to handle those issues. And if you're not a member, they're not going to help you to the same extent.
I mean, in a climate of kind of revenge taking and enemies lists, it seems like this could really come into play. Does it affect your workers too?
It would. Again, the funding pieces would clearly affect them because we would not be able to function, particularly when we talk about the social services arm. Many of our agencies in New York City, particularly in social services, HRA, Human Resources Administration, Administration for Children's Services, and Agree the Homeless Services Agency, rely on as much as 75% funding from the federal government. So it would be a huge impact on them.
I want to ask you about your work with women in the workplace and in the union, because another aspect of this administration that's coming in is, sure, there's the history of sort of white supremacy and look at the lack of diversity in the cabinet, but also this kind of culture of machismo, patriarchy, getting away with all sorts of abusive behavior and even language. What are you hearing from the women that you work with, and how are you bolstering their courage at this moment?
One of the things that I'm very proud that District Council 37 and AFSCME has done over the years is we've really promoted and pushed the importance of women leadership and equality. We have what's called the Women's Leadership Academy that was started in AFSCME several decades ago. And we have had over probably about 150 at this point in that cohort of leaders. And these are women that are now in positions on our executive board, on locals, chairing major committees that impact the work that we do, whether it's bargaining, whether it's setting policy, whether it's selecting through our screening committees, elected officials that we hope to endorse because they have the same views. So, as you know, our union is predominantly women, in many cases women of color, immigrant communities. So we are trying to be the living experience of what really should be that beloved community, that community that wants to reflect and push on those critical issues that are out there.
It does seem like that is critical to all of us. How we're going to get through this period is, you know, friends don't let friends deal with this situation alone. All right, Gabriel, Barbara, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Gabriel Pajera and Barbara Edmonds, wonderful speaking with you. That is it for CityWorks this time. If you have comments or questions, write to us at cityworks@slu.cuny.edu. And be sure to download the CUNY TV app where you can watch this show and all of CUNY TV's programming. For CityWorks, I'm Laura Flanders. Thanks for watching.